Welcome to Pesto Comics Audio Edition. This is the entry for March 5th, 2025. Best laid plans. When things just don't go how you wrote them up. Welcome back. After a cold, dark, and snowy winter, I'm finally feeling like spring is coming. It's wonderful. We've experienced some of the highest snowfalls I've seen in years here in Toronto. We don't know where to put a lot of the snow, and that bit of melting that we've had has been a huge relief. It's also going to be nice to be able to just go outside without having to give it a thought. Is it wet? Is it cold? Is it snowy? Don't worry about it. Just go. I work from home, so I spend most of my time sitting in the basement looking out a small window. It's less like a prison than I'm describing it to be, I promise. Back when I used to be in the office, I'd get a little bit of exercise during my walk from the parking lot to the office, which was 2 city blocks away. For those that know Toronto, I'd park in Kensington Market and walk to Hospital Row. I don't know if it's the same everywhere, but in Canada, parking around a hospital is prohibitively expensive, even with employee rates. So I would park where I could afford to. I could have arguably taken transit, but it would have taken me 3 times as long to get to work. So I opted for a drive and a long stroll. Nowadays, my commute is from the top floor of my house to the basement office. I honestly wouldn't trade it for anything. I get so much more work done, and my workday ends when the work is done, rather than after a long walk and then a slog through the horrible Toronto traffic. All this to say, I'm really looking forward to the days when I can walk to the local library without my toes freezing, or sit on the water's edge of Lake Ontario and enjoy the sun as it beams down on my face. We're still a few weeks away from that, but the signs of spring are bringing in a lot of optimism. And don't we all need it? There's a whole lot of tension in the world, and I'm not qualified to get into it here, nor do I want to. Instead, I'll focus on my own stresses with Pesto Comics as I've had to pivot and change some plans more than once. That's what today's entry is all about. But before we get into that, some good news. Project update. From Parts Unknown number 2 has funded. We're about a week and a half away from the close of the From Parts Unknown number 2 campaign, and it's going pretty well. That ends on March 14th, by the way. It took a little longer to fund than any of my recent projects, but I've also upped the goal from the usual. The result is not entirely surprising. There's a theory that keeping the goal too low keeps potential backers away, as though they only back projects to get them over the line, rather than wanting the products on offer. Personally, I'd rather avoid the stress of crossing the funding line, since the comics are already produced. I'm simply looking to recoup some costs, and more importantly, gain new readers. I'd rather not be stressed that we're a handful of dollars away from a goal where missing it would have 50 or 60 backers lose their pledges, just to then rerun a campaign to get the book out there with a new, lower goal. I think that means for the next campaigns, I'll keep the goal low. If I was being entirely honest with the goal amounts, it would have to be 4 to 5 times what I usually set them as anyway. Making the goal harder for no real reason doesn't seem to be worth it. All this to say, I'm happy with how this campaign is going. I'm hoping to hit our stretch goal so we can send another magnet. I'm building a little collection of Pesto Comics magnets with these stretch goals unintentionally. I like them. Media update. Hear me on Comixlaunch. I mentioned it on my social Sunday afternoon, but I was so happy to be asked to be on the Comixlaunch podcast. It's this podcast that made it possible to feel like making comics in a sustainable way was actually possible. I've been a listener for way longer than I've actually been making comics. So to get to hear myself talk about how far I've come on the very same podcast feels totally surreal. I'm always pumping Tyler's program as it's a great way to meet creators at all levels. And getting to be on the show really made me feel like what I've learned and put into action is working. Event update. I'm going to TCAF. If you're listening to my podcast every week, you know that I'm always tempering that I may or may not be tabling at TCAF this year. It's been a must on my list since the very beginning of my indie comic career. It's the indie convention here in Toronto, and I'm very excited to say that I will be tabling at the 2025 edition at the Mattamy Athletic Center, the former Maple Leaf Gardens, on June 7th and 8th. I don't have too many details to share yet, but I did apply to get a table on the ice. The same ice that I play my Sunday hockey league on. If you find yourself in Toronto in June, it's a free convention. I highly recommend it. In fact, I was doing the extra hard sell on my thought bubble neighbor, Barry Renshaw, when I was there last November. It's a very comparable experience to that convention. I'm waiting on word to see if I'll also be doing a sequel to my workshop about crowdfunding comics on the Friday's Word Balloon Academy. Here's hoping, but I'm just pleased to have a table at all. Nonetheless, the tabling plans are now locked in. But let's talk about when your schedule goes wrong. Main story. It's Murphy's Law. When I was in film school, we were taught about the concept of Murphy's Law. What can go wrong will go wrong. It immediately became an overused cliche as my classmates would use it with anything that didn't go their way. Slept in this morning? Murphy's Law. Missed your train? Murphy's Law. They forgot to put cream in your double-double at Timmy's. Murphy's Law. Didn't get accepted to the film festival? Murphy's Law. Clearly, none of these are a very good example of what Murphy's Law is. It was an excuse to blame any kind of bad luck on something external. Sometimes, not every time, but sometimes, it's your own doing. It's lack of planning. It's lack of preparedness. It's lack of forethought. In my case lately, it's been a mix of overenthusiasm and a high level of optimism. I think that this gets me through a lot of what I try to do every day. I don't think I could have accomplished half of what I did without believing that I was more than capable. But sometimes it doesn't always work as expected. The original plan for this post. Sometimes it's the little things. As late as last week, I was planning on doing a fulfillment postmortem for Big Smoke Pulp for this post. I thought I'd left myself more than enough time that packages would already be in the mail and out to backers. Instead, I'm looking at it possibly being a week or two behind what I thought. I was convinced that these books would be out by January. Considering we're in the first week of March, you can imagine how frequently I've moved the goalposts for that project. Some of that was out of my control. I mentioned in the postmortem that having a thank you page in the book made it complicated to send it to print, as I was still waiting for backers to confirm their names. The part that was entirely out of my control was the multiple issues with the printer, be it paper stock availability, delivery dates, formatting changes based on slight adjustments to sizing. I've had some really good luck with printing comics, but printing this book has really taught me some lessons. Quick to pivot. As I mentioned in my intro, I've worked at a hospital for a very long time. I still do today, but working from home has altered the immediate stress you feel in that environment. If you ever need to be truly tested for how much stress and peril you can be put in, try a job at a hospital. It makes everything else seem trivial. As much as I could have stressed things being late or not going to plan, I've been conditioned for changing things on the fly. When you're mentally prepared for the kinds of things that could possibly go wrong, you just go into a resolver mode when they occur. You just know what to do. More often than not, take some kind of action to keep things rolling in the right direction, along with clear and transparent communication for everyone involved. In this case, it was letting the backers know where their books were and when they could expect them, which is much less stressful than trying to fix a PC in an active operating room so the surgeons can see the patient files of the anesthetized gentleman on the table in between them. This skill is going to become more and more important as I've increased my output tremendously this year. I have at least 6 more Kickstarter campaigns planned and a handful of books for Kindle Unlimited, before those eventually go wide via Kickstarter as well. All these projects are in various stages of production. Always having something else to jump to makes it easy not to dwell on the things that are outside of your control. Speaking of, Big Smoke Pulp Volume 2. I know, based on the amount of readers that signed up for this newsletter from BigSmokePulp.com, that there is an interest on when the call for entries for Volume 2 will open up. Before anyone panics or unsubscribes, I'm still planning on it. This will certainly happen. However, where it fits in the calendar is becoming a little more of a question. With all the unexpected changes and challenges I've been facing, I'm not ready to start collecting the deluge of short stories in my inbox. Rather than opening up the call for entries and never getting back to authors, I'd rather open it when I'm ready and available to start reading everybody's amazing work. With my foray into the publishing side, I'm expecting I'll transform how I do business overall. I'd rather iron out those processes in this arm of the business before I get another 40 authors on board for the next entry. The good news? My process for comics is pretty set and clear. Naked Kaiju Woman is on track. I'm hesitating to send it to the printer with a couple of finishing touches and checks, but it should be ready to fulfill very soon. Planning 2025 and beyond. If you check the bottom of these posts or listen to the end of the podcast, I share everything that I have planned in the future, even if it doesn't have a title or all the details in place. If you're really paying attention, you'll see that every once in a while I shift things around. For the most part, I've been consistent. 23-day Kickstarter campaigns, with 19 days in between that and the following Kickstarter. There are a couple exceptions to fill out the year. I take most of December off, and there's a couple of gaps here or there. But for the most part, I'm launching these campaigns constantly and consistently. So, with so many plates spinning, I'm always adjusting, correcting, and considering what might fit better where. I'm not alone. James Gunn and Peter Safran just came out with a revised version of the DCU slate. If they have to adjust their schedules with millions of dollars and hundreds of jobs at stake, I can too. As an independent creator, working with a whole host of freelance independent creators who are doing this as a side gig, or also trying to juggle multiple projects to make ends meet, I have more of an excuse than Warner Brothers might. I'm not excusing missing deadlines or not keeping promises. I'm trying to anticipate issues before they happen and being very clear about it. Things are always going to go wrong. If you can do your best to foresee them, then you can plan accordingly. This is why I feel so comfortable with my ambitious slate. Even if things don't release on the date I originally planned, you'll always get your comics and books when I say you will, or as close as I can possibly get it. It's frustrating, but also the fun part. Challenges are always going to come. It's part of the deal. Financially speaking, I could be doing a lot better, but I know this is all part of growth. Anticipating the uphill climb and the challenges within makes the pitfalls a lot easier to stomach. When things go wrong, like a couple of copies of From Parts Unknown getting completely mangled by the postman en route to backers, or printing delays with Big Smoke Pulp, it's a lesson for the future. It's very rare that things are going to go smooth from end to end. So knowing what could happen equips you better for the next round. I really do enjoy all of it. It's probably why I enjoy games like Dead Cells, Balatro, and Hades. It's about figuring it out, almost empty-handed, and trying to improve with each run. Now equipped with all the knowledge and skills you've picked up the last time. I'm not a lonely writer. I'm not one of those writers that just wants to write and be left alone. I enjoy fulfillment. I enjoy the printing process. I enjoy lettering. I enjoy working with amazing artists and creators of all stripes. I love meeting people at conventions, like TCAF. Most importantly, I love getting to talk to you guys every week. The fact that more and more people are here every time I release a post is something I couldn't imagine even a couple of years ago, and I try to share all of it with you so you can learn along with me. I appreciate being able to do that, even if it's not exactly what I planned. Until next time. Coming up on the Substack, March 12th, don't waste the daylight. You've lost an hour, don't waste the rest. And March 19th, beginning the season, Toronto Comic Con, Toronto FC, and getting some fresh air. And March 26th, double fulfillment, Naked Kaiju Woman, and Big Smoke Pulp Volume 1, fulfilling Big Smoke Pulp Volume 1 and Naked Kaiju Woman. And upcoming appearances. So as I've said, TCAF, I have a table. Amazing. I'm so happy. I will be there somewhere in the building. I hope on the ice, if not on the ice, somewhere around it. But it's a free convention, so if you're in Toronto, please come by, say hi. It'd be a lot of fun to meet you. I've also put in my applications for Montreal Comic Con, Fan Expo Canada, and Ottawa Comic Con. That is a convention every month, somewhere in Canada, between Quebec and Ontario. If you happen to be around, hopefully I'll be there and I'll be able to see you. The one I'll be going to for sure, one way or the other, is Fan Expo, whether I get a table or not. But for the other two, if I land a table, I'll be there. If not, we'll have to see whether I make it out. I've added one more to potential tables as I've applied to be at Word on the Street. So this is actually at Queen's Park downtown. It's actually very close to where I used to go into the office. So our provincial parliament area, again, if you're familiar with Toronto, you know exactly where Queen's Park is. But if you're not, a beautiful old building and a huge park. And what happens is everybody gets the tents, and it's a whole bunch of authors and creators out there selling their wares. It's mostly a literature festival, but there are comics and things available there as well. So I'll probably have the whole gamut of things. I'll have a lot more for the table by the time we get here because it's the end of September. And what I'll be attending. Next weekend is Toronto Comic Con. I've been saying I'd be there for Sunday. I'm flipping that. I'm going to be there Saturday morning, just the morning, because I am going to be rushing over the TFC game in the afternoon. But I'm trying to be as efficient as humanly possible and get my whole Toronto visit, even though it's only 15 minutes away from me. But trying to get everything downtown done at once. So it should be a fun, if brief, time. And then there's the Toronto Indie Authors Conference. I've been talking about this quite a bit. I really do love this event. Again, I'll only be there for half of the Saturday, but I'll be there all Sunday. So if anybody happens to find themselves there, please reach out. It'd be great to see you. And I highly recommend checking out their Discord. It's a great place. I'm very active in there, so I'm very easy to track down if you happen to be in there. Two of my later in the year events that I'm still considering: New York Comic Con and Author Nation. This is in October and November. We'll see if I make it out to both of them. I really do hope to. Two very different things, one very comic focused, one very author focused, but the goal is to make it out to both. Hopefully I see you guys there. The Pesto Comics release calendar. So we are still in the midst of From Parts Unknown #2. 3 short weeks later, we launch From Parts Unknown #3. So this comic's just going to keep rolling. It's just going to keep getting out there. The goal is to get the entire series in everyone's hands by July, August time, at which point we'll be in the next Kickstarters for both the sequel to Naked Kaiju Woman, for a secret romance project I'm working on. I have another one-shot that I'm negotiating with an artist for that'll be coming in September. So lots of fun to be had. I'm keeping myself super busy, so if you'd like to check it out, I'd really appreciate you taking a look. And on the Instant Ink Comic Book Podcast, this week we have a new guest, Chris O'Hara with Bent Box Comics. This guy's amazing. He's doing something really special with Bent Box. He's really altruistic in what he's doing. It's not about making money for him at all. It seems it's really about trying to build a community, trying to do some good with the comics that he's putting together. And it's honestly very impressive. I could only hope to be so thoughtful and kind as Chris was. And he has a lot of cool stories. The story we come up with was actually very fresh in his mind when we got to it. The prompt kind of sparked it, and we got a really cool page out of it. So highly recommend checking out the podcast this week. And that's the post for this week. So the big secret is I am not on Canadian soil as you listen to this. I'm somewhere in Denver, Colorado. It's my brother's bachelor party week, so that should be a lot of fun. It'll be interesting. I know that I'll have a bunch of copies of Big Smoke Pulp waiting for me that should hit my door by the time I get home. So that means that I'm coming home and I'm immediately jumping into fulfillment. It's well overdue. I'm excited to finally start getting these books out there and having the finished copies in my hand. I'll have sent Naked Kaiju Woman to the printers by then, so it'll just be a couple weeks after that I'll have to be doing fulfillment for Naked Kaiju Woman. Lots of fun to be had. I'm really looking forward to getting all these packages together. A little worried as I speak about this now. It is Monday, and we are talking about potential tariffs yet again. So I'm sure hoping that gets settled in some way, because I would hate for all the Americans that have ordered hard copy books to have to pay anything. Again, it would likely, even at 25%, not be very much. Tariffs work on the value of the item, not the retail price. So I will be keeping the value relatively low in order to mitigate any tariff costs there. But nonetheless, it's an extra hurdle that nobody wants to deal with. And here we are. So here's hoping that gets settled soon. But all that said, I'm here on Monday. I'm leaving on Tuesday. I'm panicking a little bit. It's late in the afternoon and I'm leaving early tomorrow morning. So I got packing on the brain along with all the fulfillment and all that stuff that has to be done. So I'm really looking forward to just being able to start making progress on all this. It's a weird feeling that I'm going on what is a vacation. And if anything, I feel like I have more work to do than ever. Maybe it's not such a weird feeling, but it's an unfortunate one because I was really hoping to just let loose and shake everything off. And instead I have everything in the back of my head. But that's okay. It's what I signed up for myself. I'm used to this level of stress, if not significantly worse, and that's the whole thing, so I'm pivoting. I'll be doing a lot of writing in the airport and while everybody sleeps in with their hangovers in the mornings, so I'm looking for this to be a relatively productive vacation. I think it'll be a lot of fun, and yeah, I'll be back next week and back on the grind, and if anything, much more relieved that I can start getting packages out there. But with all that said, I want to thank you for listening. It means the world to me that you stay this long to listen to me yammer on at the end. So I really do appreciate it. But I'll let you go. We'll talk again next week. Thank you so much. One more time, there's just a few days left for From Parts Unknown, so please, if you haven't been to Kickstarter, please give that a look. With that, I want to thank you. We'll talk again next week. Bye.